Which are the best professions for both PvE and PvP in World of Warcraft Cataclysm? Let's go through all of them and see which classes and specs benefit from which profession the most to optimize your gameplay and performance. And if you want to optimize your in real life performance, check out this channel's sponsor MADMONQ and their multivitamin complex called Champion, so it can perform not only in game but in real life as well. And use my link in the video description to support the channel. For the purposes of this video, I'll be using this website, wowprofessions.com. Let's start with archaeology actually, because that's a new profession. So you can have two main professions on your character, but you can have all the secondary professions you want, which include cooking, fishing, archaeology. So anybody can take archaeology and try their luck at farming Zinrock, Destroyer of Worlds, which is a best in slot sword for basically any class that can wield two-handed weapon, whose primary stat is strength, so Death Knights, Warriors, and Paladins. For the first season, that means vicious PvP, and for the first tier raids. It is 359 item level on Cataclysm, which is equivalent to normal raid weapons. There are obviously heroic weapons from raids which are better, and it's also equivalent to the PvP weapons you would get for conquest points, but it's gonna take a few weeks until you're able to get your hands on those. So if you're lucky, or you're just really passionate about archaeology and farming all the fragments, you can go and pursue this weapon. For me personally, I never pursued archaeology. It's just too much time wasted, too much grind, and 2 RNG. Tailoring gives you an enchant on your cloak that can improve your attack power. If you're a warrior, paladin, death knight, it is called Sword Guard Embroidery, and the enchant gives you a proc. It procs for several seconds. You need to track it, so make sure you have an add-on like Tell Me When or WeChorus or something like that, where you can track when the proc is active. It usually procs within the first 10 to 15 seconds of you being in combat. So if that's the time when you're usually popping your burst, it is a very good profession to have. Same thing with other classes. If you're playing a class which is main stat is intellect, then it will proc intellect. S tier profession, as long as you can track the proc and make the best out of it. But it's not the case for every class, and it's not the case for every single game you'll be in. So it can be S tier, it can also be F tier in some situations, but it usually procs within those 10 to 15 seconds, which in most of the games is close to ideal. Then we have skinning, which is a gathering profession. It doesn't give you primary stat, it instead gives you secondary stat, which is critical strike, while most other primary professions, including alchemy, blacksmithing, enchanting, engineering, inscription, jewelcrafting, leatherwork, and tailoring, most of these professions give you plus 80 main stat. So getting only plus 80 secondary stat is inferior. So in most cases, I would not recommend going with any gathering profession. Mining, herbalism, skinning, all are usually inferior to the regular primary professions. But hey, 80 crit rating, still better than nothing. So if you need to farm materials for the leatherworking and you need that skinning on your character, go for it. It's better than nothing. Mining, similar story. You get toughness, which provides you with stamina. Again, stamina is not a stat you would gem for, unlike on Wrath of Lich King. And herbalism is a little bit of a different story. You get the lifeblood effect with herbalism, which increases your haste and also gives you a minor heal. The little healing it gives you, it's pretty much nothing, but it gives you considerable amount of haste. So for classes like Death Knights, where you go for that haste, it may be pretty good to pair it up with your gargoyle cooldown, since your gargoyle takes a snapshot of your stats at the time of pressing the spell. This could be considered both for PvE and PvP. You either go for burst with lifeblood and gargoyle, providing you even with better burst, faster rune regeneration with more haste and so on, or you just go for straight up 80 main stat throughout the entire duration of the fight, because it doesn't change. It's not a proc, It's just baseline plus 80 stat no matter what you do. So it comes down to your playstyle, I would say. Then we have Inscription, which gives you an enchant on your shoulders. So for those of you that play PvE and need to farm reputations with Therazane for shoulders, this will save you some time. For PvP, you have really solid shoulder enchants that you can purchase for honor points, so it's not that big of a deal. But these shoulder enchants give you extra stats. Again, just like any other primary profession, except gathering professions, it gives you plus 80 extra stats. So normally you would get plus 50 intellect. Here with this enchant, you get plus 130 intellect, so you get those extra 80 intellect for this enchant compared to the regular enchants for non-inscriptors. Engineering is also special. It gives you an on-use enchant to your gloves that you can use, but you cannot stack it with your DPS trinket. So if you're using a PvP trinket, you cannot activate at the same time your burst, your DPS trinket, and the glove enchant. You can only use one or the other, the glove enchant or your trinket. And then after 30 seconds, you can use the other. So for instance, you use your DPS trinket because it's the stronger effect with your burst. And then 30 seconds after, a minute after, you can use the glove enchant. This is very good with rogues, which have burst every 1 minute. So while your DPS trinket is still on cooldown, you can use the glove enchant. Or for frost DKs, which also have their burst every minute with Pillar of Frost. Or potentially a marksmanship hunter with readiness and rapid fire, which also refreshes cooldown on their rapid fire burst. Increases your main stat, whether it's intellect, agility, or strength, depending on what you play. You also get epic engineering helms. That means 359 item level headpiece, which is insane, especially early on in the game, when you're only getting 352 item level from Battlegrounds for your honor gear and 364 for your vicious parts that cost you conquest points. Having 359 item level just off of a profession as an extra bonus is amazing. Plus, you can choose your own cogwheel socket that will give you a stat that you choose. So no more need to reforge, no more need to have a less desirable secondary stat. You can just use the appropriate cogwheel socket, whether you need critical strike, haste, dodge, resilience, whatever stat you need on your helmet, you can go for that socket. And of course, especially for those of you that are into PvP, you have a ton of fun things to do. You have your nitro boosts, which increase your speed rapidly, so you can escape any fight or catch up to anyone that's running away from you. You have also absorb shields and many toys, teleports. My personal #1 favorite profession is engineering, just for these funny toys and things you can do with the profession. And then we have Jewelcrafting, which is also a bit special. You get around 80 stat, 3 extra gems that give you more stat, which on the first 2 seasons is a big benefit, but on the last season it's actually worse than the other professions because you're able to get baseline regular stronger gems on the last season. But on the first and second season, Jewelcrafting is great because you're able to gem for anything, including resilience. You would otherwise not be able to opt into resilience since most of the other professions only give you intellect, agility, and strength, your main stat. But for classes like Resto Shaman in PvP, you want to go for as much resilience as possible. So if you're playing a Resto Shaman and you want to go for the optimal performance, you will see the best Resto Shamans running Jewelcrafting professions. One more thing worth mentioning is that with those better gems on the last season, the regular gems that give you more stats than the previous gems from the previous 2 seasons, with blacksmithing that give you 2 extra gem slots, you will actually benefit more on the last season. So if you're playing on the Cataclysmic season on Dragon Soul right tier, you'll ideally go blacksmithing as one of your primary professions, and then you can go either tailoring if you want to have the proc, or engineering if you want to go unused, or you can go any other primary profession that gives you plus 80 primary stat. And overall, there's not really the best profession in every scenario and the worst profession in every scenario. It comes down to how you like to play your class, what class and spec you're playing, and what stats you're going for. So as I mentioned, Resto Shaman will want to go for resilience, so he goes Jewelcrafting so he can gem for more resilience. Retribution Paladin and double DPS comps wants to burst fast, so he goes for that Tailoring. Same for PvE. Usually you go into PvE fight and you want to pop all your cooldowns very early, so you want to go with that Sword Guard, Light Wear, Dark Glow, Embroidery, and pop everything as soon as possible so it gets refreshed again and you can use it again in the fight. And generally you don't want to go for the Gathering professions because the bonuses are the weakest. Gathering professions are more just for skilling the primary professions or for selling the materials and making gold on the auction house. So that's been my little quick rundown of all the professions in both PvE and PvP. There aren't really big differences in terms of professions best for PvE and for PvP. You can let me know if you know about any tips with professions or maybe anything I forgot to mention. Check out MADMONQ, the channel sponsor, and their products, and use my link in the video description. Thanks for watching. Like, comment, subscribe, and I will see you in another Cataclysm video.